Hello friends, welcome back. Today we're going to use a predefined scale to place elements. With the scales set up, it's time to map the scatter plot again. The scales are like processing functions that turn X and Y raw data into values that fit and render correctly on the SVG canvas. They keep the data within the screen's plotting area. You set these coordinate attributes values for the SVG shapes with the scaling function. This includes X and Y attributes for rectangles or text elements. CX and CY for circles. Here's an example. So here we have a shape in which we're creating an attribute with where we use the X one and we're scaling it to position at D0. Scales set shape coordinate attributes to place the data points into the SVG canvas. You don't need to apply scales when you display the actual data values, for example, in the text method for the tooltip or label. So use X and Y scale to position both circle and text shapes onto the SVG canvas. For the circles, apply the scales to set the CX and the CY attributes. Give them a radius of 5 units too. For this text element, apply the scales to set the X and Y attributes. The values or the labels should be offset to the right of the dots. To do this, add 10 units to the X data value before passing it to the X scale. Okay, cool. Let's pull this apart and look it up. Yeah, I'm going to actually stretch this out even more because these are long ones. So here we have a data set in which we have looks like X and Y values. And we're setting a constant for the height and the width of the SVG element for 500. We're creating a padding of 60. Here we set our padding and our scales up just like we did in the last lesson. And now we're setting up a SVG body and we're setting all of these things here. So here now we've got what's this? Well, yeah, okay, so here we're building the actual SVG utilizing the previous examples of the height and the width. And now we've got the SVG select all circles. So here we're grabbing all the circles and we're saying for each data set, for each point in the data set, we're going to add a circle. Yeah, I wonder why this is like that. Okay, and so we want to use the X scale. You want to add your code below this line. Shape.attr. Select all circles, append. Okay, so here what we want to do is chain some more elements here. So we're going to be doing something like this. Append circle. Circle. Okay, so here we'll go attr. And then within here, we're going to say, use the X scale and Y scale to position both circles and text shapes into the thing. So here's our circle shape. So whatever we'll be doing here, we'll be doing to there. And here's for our labels. So whatever we're doing to our labels, we're going to want to be doing there. This can be right there. I don't understand why it's right there. Okay. So for the circles, apply the scales to set the CX and CY attributes. Circle. So we want to set the CX attribute, and we're going to set that to well, what we want to do is the CX. So here's our X points right here. So we're going to want to take the data set. Well, I'll do it in vanilla JavaScript first. So function, and then we're going to say data point. No, we'll say X value. And then within it, we'll pass in, we're going to want to return our X value at position 0. And I'm going to console.log just to describe what's happening here. I don't think X value is a good way to describe this. It's not. So the X value, but what we're really doing is we're just iterating through the data set. We've got our data set and we're setting an attribute of CX equal to that. And so, yeah, right now our X value is a dumb thing to say. So we could say data set, data point. And then we want to pass this into the right ones. So right now, our data point, so right now we're passing it through here. This is our XY value, XY value. So our data point at position 0 is the one which gets us 34, 109, 310, 34, 109, 310, etc. And so that's how we assign the CX value to that. Now, we don't need the console log in here now, so we can get rid of that. Yeah, for the circles, apply the scales to set the CX and CY attributes. Give them a radius of 5 units too. Okay, cool. So I think the next thing we want to do is go ATTR, and we're going to do pretty much the same thing, just we're going to set the Y functions. And then finally, we want to set the ATTR of R to 5. Okay. So yeah, we're assigning these guys, like assigning elements to the data points. So we set a radius of 5, and that makes the dots kind of big. If we were to do 10, they'd be twice the size. If we were to do 20, they'd be even bigger. But we want to keep them at 5 for now. All right, so that's good for the circles, I believe, for now. So now we want to adjust the text. So let's try to keep the periods in the same distance of space so that the code looks really clean. We want to apply the scales to set the X and Y attributes. So here we can just do, again, ATTR. We're going to set the X attribute, and we're going to also set the Y. But for the X, we can just do that initially. The label should be offset to the right of the dots. To do this, add 10 units to the X value before scaling it to the X scale. Okay, so ATTR of the X, what we want to do is add 10 to it. What we're trying to do right now is put the text in there, and the text will be equal to the data points. As you can see, we're returning the data point at position 0 and a comma separated value and the data point at position 1. So our text is going to be equal. It's going to look just exactly like this does. So yeah, what we want to do now is set the position of X. So here we're going to want to go D. Well, I'll do it like in vanilla, and then we can factor it down later. So our data point, same exact thing as above, which gives us that array with 2 points on it. And so here again, if I were to console.log this data point, X, ATT. Oh, ATT, we need ATTR. So here again, we're just iterating through these points, and we want our position X. Well, our data point at position 0 is equal to 34,109, but we want to make it X plus 10, right? So 44,119. And that'll give us a position to return that. So we're just going to return this as our X point. Cool. Now that we've got that, so yeah, we're iterating through and we're just returning whichever one. With each element, we're setting the text to have an X scale equal to that. I hope that makes sense. And we're going to do it again. ATTR Y is equal to a function of the data point. And again, if I were to console.log, you'll see there's a lot of similarities here going on. We're just doing the same thing, but we want to go data point at position 1. That'll get us the Y values, so 78, 280, 120. And we want to return that, right? So, but we want to return that. To do so, add 10 to the X value before passing it to the X scale. Okay. Well, it looks like we just want to return the Y data points. We don't actually need to console log them. And I'm down here. So instead of console logging, we're just going to return. Cool. Now our labels are there. Run the tests. Does not pass. Okay, cool. The first circle element should have a CX value of approximately 91. The first circle value. Okay, so let's go up here. The first circle value. So if we console.log, have a CX value. Console.log, sorry, data point at position 0. Okay, so it should have a value. Your code should have 10 circle elements. All right, the first circle element should have a CX value of approximately 91. So right now we see that it's 34. So this is not being passed in correctly. Oh, I see what's going on. Okay, we need to make it so that we scale our points. So here we have our data point, but what we need to do is pass that in as a parameter to our scale. So if we were to inside of the console, or yeah, this is just inside the console log so we can see what's going on. And then I'm going to actually add the data point at position 0 as well here. So 34 is our position point, but because we are setting our, we want it to be about 91 because that is the way that our scale has built so that we can deal with dynamic data. And so that's the key. Okay, so the CY value should be about 368. So we can get rid of this console log now. No, we want to make sure we do that here. So X scale, we want to return this 91 type value. Okay, it's messed up for now, but that's fine because we need to get it all right. So here we're doing our console log again, and we're seeing at our data point that we're passing to the CY value is 78 and needs to be 486. And so what we want to utilize is our Y scale. So we'll take our Y scale down here and then pass our data point into the Y scale. And that's going to get us 367.8, which is what they're looking for. They say approximately 386. So if I copy this guy, and we want to make that guy be the return value, and then we can get rid of our console log. And same thing down here, I'm pretty sure. So for here, I'm pretty sure if we ran the test, this next one would pass now. Okay, good. Okay, so now it's probably saying our X values are off. So I'll scroll down to here. Your first label should have an X value of approximately 100. Okay, well, our first X value, let's say console.log this, and we're going to say data point at position 0 plus 10. So that's our first one. We've got 44 and it should be approximately 100. So what we want to do is pass in the X scale, right? We want to pass our data point in as a parameter to the X scale. And so now it's at approximately 100, it's at 99. So that's good to go. So we're console logging it here. That's not going to work for us. So I'm going to get rid of the console log and add this guy into here. And now we have our X scale. And it actually looks like they're all lined up. So now we just need to do the Y scale again. The Y value should have approximately 386. So right now, if I were to console log this, our data point here, we've got 78. Well, we want to make it equal to the Y scale, right? So we're going to pass the data point in as a parameter to the Y scale. And so the Y scale 368. And now our first one is that guy. Okay, so instead of console logging it, we want our function to actually return it. And then we want to get rid of the console log. And I think that this is going to be the right answer. Let's run the test and see what happens. Awesome. Okay, cool. Now, that's the answer. The thing about this though is it's kind of big and fat, and so let's refactor this to make it look a little bit better. So as with all of these guys, instead of using this vanilla JavaScript, we can get rid of this guy and make it an arrow function. And that'll give us the same exact feedback, right? So that makes our function a little bit more concise and easy to read. We could do it down here as well. And just add our arrow function here. This is exactly the same thing. We're just using a different flavor of JavaScript. Now, another cool thing that we can do is use the implicit returns. So instead of saying return with the arrow function, or with the bracket, we can just put it all on a single line together. Get rid of the bracket. And there we'll have the same thing. You see the tests are passing down here, or like it's running. Add your code below this line. And we can do the same thing for the Y scale. No brackets and just that guy. And same thing up here. Just remove that and make it so it's an implicit return on a single line. But we want to keep the arrow function. Nice. If we run the tests, that should pass as well, but I made a mistake here. There we go, run the tests. Nice. Okay, and yeah, a lot of people like to make it even more succinct, right? So instead of saying data point, we could just make this a D and use that parameter. And we'll still get the exact same thing. So data point's more explicit. I would rather use, people use data set or something like that. But this pretty much works as well. And so now we're even more cleaned up in our code. If we run the tests, you'll see that still passes as well. And finally, when you are kind of complete with a project, you can get rid of the comments because they are not necessary. That was just here for Free Code Camp to help you out. And we're missing a semicolon down here. And yeah, now we have a very succinct, accurate answer. And it looks about as well as I can refactor it from my basic knowledge of JavaScript. So hope you guys enjoyed this one, and we'll see you in the next lesson.